Yo, what is going on, Headliner Nation? It's your boy, The Doc, and we are back with another Dynasty Headliner video. And on today's video, we're looking at wide receivers that you should trade for right now. All right, before we get into specific players, let's talk about some things that I think you need to know from some research I did on the wide receiver position. First up, age matters when it comes to wide receivers. 80% of wide receivers have their best season between the ages of 23 and 30. So we don't want any old guys. We're not trading for anybody over the age of 30. The other thing that we need to know is specifically over 55% of wide receivers have their best season between the ages of 25 and 29. So that's really the target age when we're talking about trading for specific ages of players. We're trying to get as much of that 25 to 29 range of their career as we can when we're trading for them. The other thing that we need to know specifically for the wide receivers is that 2024 was an exception to a pretty established rule when it comes to early production in their careers. Now, from 2000 to 2024, about 10% of wide receiver one seasons came from players between the ages of 21 and 23. So you only had about a 10% hit rate if you were taking a guy under the age of 23 that they would produce as a wide receiver one. The other thing is that in that span, only 7% of wide receivers drafted in the first round produced a top 12 season in their first 3 years as a NFL player. So guys weren't producing early in their careers, but of course there's always room for exceptions. And that's what happened in 2024. We actually had 4 different wide receivers under the age of 23 manage a top 12 season last year. Brian Thomas Jr., Jackson Smith-Njigba, Malik Neighbors, and Ladd McConkey all managed to be top 12 wide receivers despite being under the age of 23 last year. I'm not talking about them specifically, but obviously if you have a chance to trade for one of those guys, I would definitely encourage you look into your options there. Now, the other thing when it comes to wide receiver production that I think you should know is that wide receivers rarely drop off once they've actually hit their peak or near their peak. So 4 of the 12 top 12 wide receivers of 2024 were actually top receivers in 2023. When we go from 2022 to 2023, over half of them were top 12 wide receivers in 2022 and then repeated as top receivers in 2023. So once guys hit, they're way more likely to hit again and again and again. So we're looking for guys that have already hit that ceiling if we can, and targeting those types of players. So what exactly are we looking for when it comes to trading for wide receivers in Dynasty? We want to get them before they hit their prime years of 25 to 29. We ideally want guys that have started producing earlier because we know they're going to maintain that production. And anybody that's come off of a top 12 season that we feel like is undervalued has a very high hit rate of becoming a top 12 wide receiver again the next year in their career. So we're looking for those 3 things. Let's get into the names. The first guy up on this list has got to be Jayden Reed. Now, full transparency, I really believe that 2024 was going to be a breakout year for Jayden Reed. The signs were all there. As a rookie, he started out a little slow, but finished the season as the wide receiver 10 overall from weeks 10 to 18. Now, when he was the wide receiver 1 overall in 2024 in the first week of the season, I thought I'd made the best call that I would make all year. But after that, everything kind of changed. He kind of fell off a little bit, didn't have as productive of a year as we'd hoped he would, and that had me questioning whether or not I jumped the gun a little early on him. But just hear me out. I ran through the numbers again, and it really wasn't as bad as it seemed for Jayden Reed in 2024. He actually had more yards from scrimmage in 2024 than he did in 2023. He nearly doubled his rushing opportunities, and while it's definitely disappointing that he saw 19 less total targets, he had more receiving yards in 2024 than he did in 2023. The biggest difference that I could find from a fantasy point production is, one, it was spread out over the entire season. It wasn't just consolidated to about 8 weeks like his rookie season was. And also he had 3 less total touchdowns. And we know that touchdowns are not really a statistic that you can count on carrying over year to year. Here's the good news. Jayden Reed is only 24 years old. He's still playing in a good offense, and he's giving you production when he gets an opportunity. And based on his rookie season and the potential that he showed in flashes this year, remember, wide receiver 1 overall for the first week of the NFL season, I'm still aggressively shopping for Jayden Reed. I think I can get him at a little bit of a discount, and I think his best years are yet to come, as he's not quite hit that age apex that we see for wide receivers in that 25 to 29 range. It's very possible that these are the 2 worst seasons he'll have over the next half decade. The next guy on this list is actually the youngest player on this list, and that's Xavier Worthy. Now, I actually found myself trying to trade for Xavier Worthy in a lot of leagues in Dynasty last season. I just feel like his potential is through the roof. He's more than just a burner, something he started to show flashes of at the end of last season and into the playoffs. He finished the regular season week 15 to 17 with 3 straight 19-plus point games in fantasy, and I understand that Xavier Worthy has significant target competition in Kansas City, with Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce commanding a lot of volume, but I just don't see a reason why he can't continue to expand his role next year. Now, I don't make this comparison lightly, and I know that people are going to flame me in the comments for this, but I want you guys to look at a comparison between Tyreek Hill's stats as a rookie with the Chiefs and Xavier Worthy. And when you look at these numbers, they're not that far apart from each other. Worthy actually had more receiving yards, a little bit less rushing opportunity, but still very similar in terms of usage. And that is the thing that I'm banking on when it comes to trading for Xavier Worthy. I'm not saying that I think the Chiefs are going to use him exactly like they used Tyreek Hill. He's probably not going to command as many targets as Tyreek Hill did, but if his role is similar and the opportunities continue to grow, I'm willing to take a risk on that, even if it means I'm paying up a little bit for a wide receiver that is still very young. And I know that you're going to pay more for a guy that is young in Dynasty. A first-round rookie pick, like a later pick, plus another piece, or maybe an older veteran that's got a little bit more cachet from a fantasy perspective, and even throwing a little bit lesser of a pick with that veteran, I still think you can get Xavier Worthy for a reasonable price. And I think with the offense, with the opportunity, he's worth it. Next guy on the list is Josh Downs. Now, Josh Downs does not have the rushing upside that the first 2 receivers on the list had, but he has all of the same traits that make him a valuable pickup in Dynasty. He's had opportunities with over 205 targets over the last 2 seasons in Indy, but he's kind of been plagued with horrible consistency at the quarterback position. But despite that, he still managed to put up over 12 fantasy points in 9 of the 14 games he played last year. His 13.1 fantasy points per game were actually better than players like Tyreek Hill, DK Metcalf, George Pickens, and Marvin Harrison Jr. And yet his cost to acquire remains relatively low compared to those players in Dynasty. I'm willing to bet that you can swing a deal for Josh Downs on the cheap this offseason, maybe even for as little as a 2nd-round pick in Dynasty, and plug and play him at a minimum as a solid flex option for your Dynasty team over the next 3 to 5 years. He fits all the criteria for a guy that could continue to produce for your fantasy team, and he's only 23 years old. Next guy on the list is Jalen McMillan with the Bucs. Now, recency biased be damned, the Bucs love Jalen McMillan. They loved him in the preseason. They loved him during the regular season. And yeah, it did take him a little bit of time to start producing. And I know what most people are going to say. Why did it take Chris Godwin getting hurt before Jalen McMillan actually made an impact in Dynasty? And what I would tell those people is that's just kind of how it goes for a 3rd-round rookie pick in any NFL situation. Very few 3rd-rounders are going to get opportunity right away, especially with the depth that the Bucs had at wide receiver, with Chris Godwin and Mike Evans both commanding significant targets and playing at a pretty elite level to start the season. Now, McMillan was also a rookie who missed 4 games due to injury prior to the team's Week 11 bye. So it's not like he was really getting a lot of practice time to show him what he had during the regular season. And during the regular season, a lot of teams are not going to take an opportunity to move a veteran down the depth chart to let a guy that they like start getting opportunities. But the one thing you can't argue with Jalen McMillan is that once he got a chance, he started producing. From weeks 14 to 18, he was the wide receiver 8 overall, 5 straight games with a touchdown to end the season, 5 or more targets in each of those games. He actually finished the season with 21.9, 18.5, 16.7, 23, and 19 fantasy points. That is basically a league-winning wide receiver that you're getting for free in Dynasty if you picked him up in the 3rd or 4th round of your drafts. Now, I think there is a world where there's opportunity for McMillan heading into 2025 to even expand on those types of numbers. Chris Godwin is not a guarantee to be on the team. Mike Evans is getting into that age apex where even the elite wide receivers start to fall off a little bit. And we saw that with Mike Evans this year. He had to scrape by to get to 1,000 receiving yards. I just think that there's a chance that Jalen McMillan could end up being the 1B to Mike Evans' 1A in the passing game if Chris Godwin is gone. And even though his price is a little bit elevated due to the fact that he finished really strong in the season, I'm still trying to make something happen for Jalen McMillan. I'm not throwing everything I've got at him, but if I can pick him up in a deal or add him to a larger deal, I'm definitely taking the opportunity to try to get him on my Dynasty squad. All right, before we get into the last wide receiver in the video, I just want to thank our friends over at SeatGeek for sponsoring this video. SeatGeek is the #1 rated ticketing app on the planet. They've got over 70,000 events that you can buy tickets to. And the thing I love about SeatGeek is when you go on the app, you can actually see a rating for every single ticket that you buy on a scale of 1 to 10, tell you how good of a ticket that is. Nobody wants to be stuck in a spot where they can barely see the game or whatever venue they're trying to watch. And it definitely helps you when you're making those decisions on which seats are actually the best for you. And we've got a special deal for you. If you use the code HEADLINERS, you get $20 off your first set of tickets over at SeatGeek. Want to thank them for offering that to Headliner Nation and appreciate everybody going to check out SeatGeek and using the code HEADLINERS to get $20 off your first set of tickets on the app. The last guy we're going to talk about today is probably the most expensive guy I'm looking to acquire in Dynasty this offseason, and that's Puka Nacua. Now, sometimes you just have to pay the price when it comes to acquiring good players in Dynasty, and I think that you should invest in the talent that is Puka Nacua at this point. This could be the cheapest that you can acquire him over the next 2 to 3 years. He's coming off, on paper, a down season in 2024 compared to his unbelievable rookie campaign. Matt Stafford's getting a little bit older, but there's a lot of hope here. And he actually produced 1.2 more fantasy points per game this season than he did last season. He just played a lot less. The team's already said that they plan on trading Cooper Kupp this offseason. And if you think Puka Nacua was force-fed targets before, wait till we see what he gets with Cooper Kupp out of the picture. Nacua averaged 9.5 targets per game as a pro over the last 2 seasons, but that was with Kupp averaging over 8. So between the two, we're looking at 17.5 targets. The last time that Matthew Stafford consolidated targets to a single wide receiver, Cooper Kupp dropped a triple crown season and led the NFL in targets with 191. This is the same Matthew Stafford that with the Lions fed Calvin Johnson the second most targets in a season in the NFL ever with 204. I think there's a realistic chance that Nacua could lead the league in targets next season. And there's just not that many guys that you can look at that are given that type of opportunity that you could potentially trade for in Dynasty. You at least have a case when you're arguing to trade for Puka Nacua. He's had some injury issues. His quarterback's getting a little bit older. You could make a deal where you trade a guy that's just a little bit further down on the list, plus a pick, and upgrade in terms of age and potentially even production, and get you a hold of Puka Nacua this offseason. If you have the assets to burn and you're looking for a cornerstone piece, somebody that you can build your Dynasty team around, the roster that you're looking for, Puka Nacua is the guy for me this offseason that I think you should be aggressively trying to get on your Dynasty squads. That's all I got for you guys this week. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did like the video, subscribe to the channel. It's free. It helps us out a ton, especially here in the off season. If you haven't checked out some of our other Dynasty shows and just shows in general, make sure you do that as well. Hit the notification button if you want to get notified every time we drop a video like this. And if you really want to help us out in the off season, considering becoming a member of Headliner Nation, hit the join button down below. It helps us out a ton when we're getting a little bit less traffic here in the off season because the NFL is not going on. And hopefully you guys are enjoying this type of Dynasty content. That's all I got for you this week, and we'll see you next time.
Analytics off the chain, other channels not the same. Jake and Kyle, you know the name. Headliner Nation, we running the